Hey guys, Kuzi here for another commentary of a plus 22 key. This time around I'm going to do Atal'Dazar, and the affixes are Tyrannical, Bursting, Necrotic with the Season 3 affix of Beguiling. If you want to see my talents, Azerite, and essence choices, check the more info link underneath the video. So a few different routes you can do for AD, but this week we decided to go straight to Razan to get Lust on cooldown straight away. Lust on pull obviously, and look out for the serrated teeth dot that's down the tank. Because it does extreme single target damage. Obviously Tremor Totem, the terrifying visage here. So with this serrated teeth dot, that's the biggest mechanic of this fight you have to worry about as a healer. I prepare for it in two different ways. I try and have 2 stacks of Tidal Wave ready, and before it happens, and also you can charge a Cloudburst. And get ready to recall your Cloudburst when the tank gets low. It's not a bad idea to do, but more importantly is using your external cooldowns. As you can see, at first external cooldown I used with Earthen Wall Totem, and then the second time around I used the Vitality Conduit, which are both very effective cooldowns for a monk tank. So as you'll see, he's about to do the dot again, so put Earthen Wall down, get 2 stacks of Tidal Wave up, Unleash Life, so you get a big heal off, and then again, and you've got your Cloudburst charging, and then the tank, you can recall your Cloudburst and obviously heal the tank back to full if you need to. So that's how you combat that, by cycling your cooldowns, your external cooldowns on the tank, and obviously they have to do their part with the mitigation side of things as well. You almost take Vitality Conduit on this dungeon just for this fight, as it makes it so much easier. But it does obviously come in handy throughout the dungeon as well. Shaman has some good utility in the fight, obviously with the Tremor Totem, which allows DPS to stand in the terrifying Visage Fear and be instantly dispelled, or the whole team to be instantly dispelled, as it allows everyone to keep DPS uptime and not have to line of sight. So actually save a significant amount of time on a high Tyrannical key, as you'll be able to do this 3 or 4 times in a fight. You'll be able to terrifying visage every second one, and if someone randomly gets hit by the fear, you can obviously dispel it. Importantly, you shouldn't stack your cooldowns. So what I mean by this, it's not a good idea to overlap Vitality Conduit, Spirit Link Totem, and Earthen Wall Totem. You're going to make the target pretty unkillable if you do that, but then the next phase of the fight you're going to have no defensive abilities or external cooldowns, so it's going to make it a lot more difficult. Also avoid stepping on those raptor bones to the side, so when you're kiting the boss through pursuit, do it down this side area so he's not running over that, because that just increases the damage on the tank, and it already does a lot on high Tyrannical keys, so try to avoid that. Razan, probably, I think all the bosses are reasonably challenging these days. When you get knocked back by that tail, if you're staying in the wrong spot like I was there, make sure you use your Spirit Walker's Grace. As you can see, I did make a mistake by overlapping my cooldowns there, because I hadn't set up my Tidal Waves properly, and I Earthen Walled and Spirit Linked at the same time. So once again, do as I say, not as I do. This pack always going to be quite challenging on bursting with a void there, because of the heavier AoE the swords do to start with, then the bursting damage, and then obviously the void is going to be going off as well. So not a lot of groups won't do this, but with Resto Shaman it's usually pretty good, but you should, you want to have probably a few more cooldowns than I have at the moment. And I shouldn't have died here. This was my mistake. I should have hit a defensive ability, and that's the reason I died. But never fear, you can speed pot back into the next AoE hit here. So there you go, you can get hit again. So it's not like you're going to miss one, you can always farm your healing and get back quickly. So snapping is the cool thing to do in AD these days. You get the tank to get aggro on the swords any way possible through tricks or misdirect, and then jump at the little ledge, and the swords don't do a lot of damage. Don't find swords particularly hard to deal with on bursting week, even when they're leaping at you. But on fortified weeks with things like Sanguine, it makes it almost impossible to heal if you don't snap well. It all depends on the week. But you should always be trying to snap here. It just does make everything so much easier. For bursting, what you want to be doing is getting your setting up a burst of damage as bursting is going off. And believe it or not, Cloudburst Totem is good at healing burst damage. I feel like they've given us a little bit of a tip on how good that is. So it's similar to the Underrot commentary I did before. You wanted to use your Cloudburst Totem to charge before the bursting's going off. So putting Healing Rain down and getting your High Tide up, and then Unleash Life into a Chain Heal will heal most bursting. It is not about the absolute bursting stacks that you can heal. So if you're a DPS that walks into a key and says to the healer first thing, look, how many bursting stacks can you heal? Like I've seen that before, and it's a really stupid thing to say because it doesn't make any sense. It's not about how many stacks it is, it's about how the DPS kill and stagger the bursting stacks. So if you get 14 bursting stacks instantly, you can actually heal that if you use all your cooldowns really, really well, and the team uses your cooldowns well, and health bot and all that sort of stuff. So 14 bursting stacks are healable. But if you do 3 stagger, 4 stagger, 5 stagger, 6, like definitely dead. Like you can't do that. It's about how the DPS kill it. So if you stagger the bursting, it makes it so unhealable. So an important thing to do with your chain heal on Necrotic week, because as you can see, the tank's trying to reset the stacks, and I'm trying to help him kite by putting things like the root totem down, EarthGrab totem. You don't want to chain heal off your tank on Necrotic week, because effectively, you've already got reduced single target healing on him. But if you chain heal off the tank, you get reduced AoE healing on the rest of your team as well, because the chain heal initial hit is what determines the rest of the team healing from the chain heal as well. So just keep that in mind. All right, so this 6-pack is probably one of the most challenging parts of this dungeon. It's very tricky, and most groups on plus 15 keys will be pulling these 2 packs together, which means there's going to be a lot of mechanics going on. First is Resto Shaman. Just focus target the Augur and interrupt as many wildfires as you can. Any casts that go through, try to dispel them quickly, as when this dot is on multiple targets, it quickly overwhelm you. Someone should kick the Fiery Enchant and should be saving the interrupt for this target, which is on the Augur as well. And as you don't ever want to spread out during the fight, because if you miss the Fiery Enchant, it causes you to spread and scatter everywhere. And then the Juggernaut will charge you with Merciless Assault and everyone gets cleaved and you'll die. So that's why you do that. You also need to designate kicks on the other mob that casts Bonsamdi's Mantle and Mending Word. So a good Outlaw Rogue can usually control this, and that's the Confessor that casts all that. If the tank needs to reset their stacks like happened there, you want to restack back in really quickly afterwards, because if you don't stack back in, then that Merciless Assault charge is going to go off and you're going to get, the whole group's going to get cleaved. You can bait the Merciless Assault charge on that pack, and I think you can do it on the other pack as well before Priestess Alunza, but and by doing that you just stand up on a ledge somewhere. You saw where the mage was standing back there, and that basically stops the Merciless Assault charge from happening to the range, so they don't need to move out of it. But it is a very simple mechanic to avoid, and I do it a bit later on in the dungeon to show you guys how to do it. So everyone's favourite boss on a high Tyrannical key, Valkal. I did upload a Grievous 22 fortified Valkal a few weeks ago, and this is just as challenging on a 22 Tyrannical with Necrotic. So at the start, just try and use your abilities to obviously heal your team. Get the ranged DPS to stack in the middle, because if you need to chain heal, at least you'll hit 2 targets. Try and put your dots up on all the totems, and when you get a chance, use your lava burst for a little bit of extra damage. Healing wave is pretty important in this fight. If you're not geared, you should be using, well, even if you are geared, you should be using healing wave. Occasional healing surge is okay, but most of your abilities, especially in this phase, should be healing wave. So when the actual boss fight starts, after this, the totems are killed. This is just an RP, I reckon. This is stupid. So you're still on 90% mana. Obviously, lust this on a high Tyrannical key. It makes it a little bit easier. I would be healable without it, but it means you can't do much damage. As you can see, I'm mainly damaging now. The team does need to be on full health before the next Noxious Stench, though, or close to it. It leaves this lingering dot on the team that, if it goes unhealed, will kill the entire party. So, yeah, as usual, do as much damage as you can when there's not a huge amount of damage going out, because it does make the fight quicker and it means less healing overall. What do you actually need to do in this fight? Basically heal a lot, and don't stand in the toxic pools, and make sure someone interrupts Noxious Stench straight away. As you saw in the first phase, when we were killing the totems, I put Vocal as my focus target, and I usually get the interrupts on the Noxious Stench, so it allows the tank to run around and DPS the totems and not have to worry about getting the interrupt. It's just a bit of cool thing that a Resto Shaman can do that no other heal can do, is allow the tank to just roam freely and do damage. It's not like you can't do damage because you're range damage as well, so you can still throw out your dots and everything. Another reason you take Spirit Walker's Grace in this dungeon is because it makes healing this so easy. If you had Spirit Walker's Grace up the whole time in this fight, the fight would essentially be a joke. But it's because you have to stop casting and move. But as you can see, when Spirit Walker was up, that was very easy to heal, and it will come up again later. And you know as soon as that comes up, you're not going to be in trouble anymore, because it just gives you free casting ability. Amazing ability. Completely underrated part of the Shaman toolkit. Don't stand in Toxic Pool on high keys for longer than half a second, because you will die straight away. It will one-shot you. So you can't dispel the lingering stench, I think it's called, which is the dot, but you can ask nicely for another person in your party, such as the monk tank, to dispel that on at least one target. You see he dispelled himself there. I mean, lucky we've got 2 rogues, so we can shout in and out here. It's not always the case, but it is pretty easy to pull that pack away to the side and escape without having to kill it. Don't kill that pack, like, ever. It's not a thing. So Stalkers by themselves, because, I mean, you can pull this together. It just makes it so much harder. The Witch Doctors are the real issue here. And the Shield Bearers of Zul are a little bit tricky as well, because of how they interact with melee with the tank kites and necrotic stacks. They do like to hit melee. So as usual, you'll be thinking about the next pack, because this one's pretty simple. So thinking about who's going to be interrupting first and second cast on the Witch Doctors, who's going to be controlling the Emissary. Obviously I'll be doing the Emissary and getting as many kicks as I can as well. And someone will need to be using their crowd control abilities to stop the shields. So that Bulwark of Juju needs to be stunned. Dispel any hex that goes out. DPS in Pugs have this really funny habit of always interrupting hex and not interrupting the Venom Blast. Don't do that. Interrupt Venom Blast as a priority, especially if the dispel's on cooldown. Just let hex go through. It's a mild damage loss, but believe it or not, dying is a bigger damage loss. So always let the tank kite. As you can see, I Earth Ellie there, so the tank can reset his stacks. His tank's coming back in. Earth Ellie's now dead. You don't want to keep the Earth Ellie once the tank comes back. So don't even bother healing there, because you're going to be snapping these. This is a good example of communication. I had no idea this pull was about to happen. I wasn't ready for this sort of burst damage, and luckily I had a few cooldowns, but it's all about choice of when to use your cooldown. So I can Spirit Link now, but I know that's a bad idea because the bursting is going to come, and if I Spirit Link now, we're going to die during the bursting. So Spirit Link as the bursting happens. DPS do a fantastic job of getting the bursting all at the same time, and it allows me to be able to heal it. And I definitely wasn't ready for that pull. That would have been very easy, and I wouldn't need to use Spirit Link if I had been able to set up for that. But it takes a few seconds to set up, which you can do as the tank's running down there. Just say, oh, I'm pulling this, not here, I'm not snapping it, and you'll be able to set up nicely with your Cloudburst and your Healing Rain and all that sort of thing, and make sure you have high tides, at least burn a bit of mana so you have some high tides available. Once again, snapping is a cool thing to do here. As a Resto Shaman, just damage the Sky Screamer. Don't bother with the swords here. Just let the DPS kill them evenly, especially when they've got, you know, this group where they're going to kill them quite evenly, and the bursting's going to go off all at once. As you can see, our Earthen Wall Totem. So each stack of the bursting tick gets reduced. So Earthen Wall Totem's really cool ability for bursting as well. As you can see, I'm chain healing off me to heal the tank, and then as the Necrotic runs off, I can burst everyone back to full. So very tricky pull coming up again, with a difficult line of sight spot this time for the Void Touch and the swords. So we are talking about how we're going to do this in voice comms at the moment, and I've said, like, we can't pull that yet. You need to kill these two things first, because I just don't have enough cooldowns available to be able to do that safely. So I said, like, I want my Earthen Wall back. I want to have my Cloudburst available as well, and that should be sufficient. But I wasn't happy to go in with no cooldowns. So as usual, just kick what you can on with Resto Shaman. There's little result. Okay, so Healing Rain straight away, Earthen Walls straight away, Cloudburst straight away. Get as many Riptides out as you can and start chain healing, and then Healing Surge so you don't waste your Tidal Wave stacks. And the peak HPS here is, I think, like 133k, and even if that cast went off, we would have been all fine. So it's not a really hard rotation. It's very simple to do high numbers. Obviously gear's involved, but if you just do a nice setup and don't try and start healing as the swords do damage, so run in there and start, you know, chain lightning the first three, and then, like, okay, there's a bit of damage going out, I might start using chain heal. Like, if you do that, that's going to cause a lot of issues, so don't do that, especially on high keys. So the other thing I want to say about Tidal Wave stacks is try not to waste them or to overcharge them. So if you chain heal after you've already got 2 Tidal Wave stacks, then you've basically wasted a Tidal Wave stack, especially if there's a lot of single target going out. Once again, the August cast Wildfire, and they both go on me here, so I pre-hit a defensive cooldown. If you're wondering how did I know that was going to happen, I didn't. I knew that was going to be their last cast, and I wasn't going to need my cooldown again for another minute and a half, so no matter what, it was worth using there. You can get these really cool cast bars on the mobs that tell you who it's targeting. I find that really annoying though. Like, it's really good on things like Siege, and it's quite good on this pack here, especially when it's the tides and you can't interrupt the wildfire cast. But overall, I find it, I just don't like the look of it, even though it is very useful. You probably should use one of those. So tank resetting here, so he's ringed, and I've also tried to use EarthGrab as well. You should always... I guess I haven't spoken much about Necrotic and the tank resetting their stacks. Obviously Earth Early is a good cooldown when they're going to go out of melee, is to pop that, which I do a few times in this dungeon, and using your EarthGrab to root the mobs for a second or so to give them a bit of breathing room. Using Earthbind and Cap Totem as well. So if the tank pulls the furthest mob away from the emissary doesn't come, interrupt the first wildfire, and now you have to bait the Juggernaut's charge. That's why I'm moving around like this. And now I'll put the Juggernaut as your focus target, and so now you can see every time they charge Merciless Assault. As you'll see on my focus target cast bar, Merciless Assault, and that's why I jump to the side and I don't get hit. You really want to avoid getting hit by that, especially on things like Bolstering Weak, where it will definitely kill you. Yeah. So once again, Merciless Assault, see me moving into Graceful, but it doesn't go to me this time because the Mage is also baiting. Ideally, Resto Shaman doesn't bait because we have to cast so much, and it's important. The group wasn't stacked there, that's why the Merciless Assault went on them. And doesn't do that much damage on Tyrannical keys, but I think it does still cost you cooldowns. Merciless Assault, jump away. So if you're wondering why you keep getting hit there, that's the reason why. You just need to know the mechanic. And it's really simple, as you saw. You don't need a high movement ability, you can literally just sidestep it. If you are watching what's going on. So pretty cool dungeon AD, I reckon. I think it's one of my... I don't know if it's my favourite dungeon. I won't tell you what my favourite dungeon is, it'll probably make everyone angry. But it is a really cool dungeon because there's so much burst damage, and with Bursting Weak it just makes it fun. We've got a really cool toolkit to be able to deal with this. So Priestess Alinza is just like Vocal, so this Gilded Claws, that should be purged instantly, increases her physical damage by 300% or something. The dot on the DPS should be dispelled instantly as well, as it reduces their damage. As you can see, I did both those, so just simple healer mechanics. And lots of burst healing here, really fun, get a really huge Cloudburst off. You know, the team's never really in danger of dying if you heal, if you have a good setup here. As you can see, the team is CCing the Spirits of Gold, so we don't have to kill it, we can just focus on the boss. Ask the range to stack up here. Makes it a lot easier to heal when you can heal everyone at once, rather than... So, you know, he's out there and I'm like, don't do that, you need to come in here. So yeah, like I said, it's the burst damage dungeon. 2 AoE bits of burst damage, or 3. The last boss, once again, purge that Gilded Claws instantly. Dispel that instantly, so you can actually do damage. So the last boss does some pretty significant burst AoE damage, so does this boss, and so does Vakal. And obviously Razan does some very significant burst single target damage to the tank. I like to think about each dungeon as a sort of different challenge. So whereas King's Rest is like sustained single target damage dungeon. Shrine of Storm is the interrupt dungeon, and so on. This is the burst damage dungeon. Bit of a sin to die to the spiders on the stairs here, so avoid that at all costs. Take the extra few seconds. Many a key in the world has been wiped by people rushing up the stairs, I'm sure of it. If you didn't know, you can Fish Feast and Mana Bun at the same time to increase your mana regeneration, as I just did there. Most people know that at this stage, but if you don't, it's a really handy trick. So Cap Totem, straight away, see me stun the ads. And you can EarthGrab Totem every single set as well. But they die so quickly there, I don't even bother. There are a few bosses you need to be doing a very significant amount of damage on. This is one of them. Every time you get a GCD spare, don't stand there, just do a lot of damage. So you should be doing over 3 million damage on a high key, especially a Tyrannical key. I mean, it all depends on gear and things like that, and who you're playing with, and whether people did the mechanics properly, but you really should be doing a good amount of damage. So set up your burst here. EarthGrab Totem. Earthbind Totem on the other side to slow them, so they don't get to the boss. It's actually catastrophic if the ads touch the boss on this high level key. It's not that it's unhealable, the dot they put out. It's that it's very hard to get everyone to full health as she soul rends, because the soul rend does so much damage, so everyone just gets one shot. If that makes sense. Once again, move in front of the boss. This is the way we do this, and we find it quite easy. There you go, lots of burst healing. I've cap totem the ads again. No need for any slows this time. Don't expect your DPS to slow the mobs. So, there's 4 targets there. How much cleave damage can you do on 4 targets in a GCD? Maximum probably 60k. So, you know, you should be slowing them because the DPS are going to do much, much, much more than that. Even if you wanted to damage them. It's like tanks taking damage and stopping the healer. Like letting a cast go through for no real reason. And then it stops the healer damage. It's like, yeah, okay, so the tank got increased damage, but it cost us, you know, 160k of healer damage. All about awareness. That could have been a nasty death there to the spiders, but a bit of dodging and weaving going on. And same thing, like if you use your slows, that means the DPS don't need to, and they've got an extra GCD to cleave the ads, and everything dies a lot quicker. So use your utility. Once again, it's not all about numbers. You can see, like, I look closely at my DBM timers on the left side. I can see when soul rend's happening, so I can see when I need to do a lot of single target healing. Once again, lots of root and slow totems out. If you play in a group where the healers and the range spread apart for this, I feel sorry for you. It makes the fight so much harder. You just need to stack up when you're healing and ranged. It doesn't matter. Yeah, okay, you lose a bit of damage. Who cares? It means the fight's reasonably easy to do. It's all about consistency, doing the mechanics properly over and over again here. Obviously keeping an eye out to see if there needs to be any interrupts on the boss when the tank's kiting it, because it's something you can do really well. Skewer is the only real damage that the Yasma does on the tank, so try and have the tank topped off when Skewer's coming out. I spirit linked there, just to help out. As you can see, this fight's all about consistency. Doing the same thing over and over again. It's very easy to do something right 10 times and the 11th get complacent, and that's what causes you to, you know, you can play pretty well all dungeon and just make one mistake here and your whole key's dead. So just try and pay attention to the end. Don't like start chatting about the next dungeon. Anyway, I hope that was useful for you to do higher AD keys. Thanks, guys.